It's the Conquest Sorcerer Kings week, and with a comment, you could win an amazing box set. We will choose 3 winners. One from YouTube, one from OnTableTop.com, and one from our Cult of Games members. So you guys get an extra chance to win.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to be delving back into the Sorcerer Kings for Conquest by Para Bellum Games, and this time I'm going to take a look at a trio of heroes for them as I check out the Maharaja, the Raj and the Sardar. Okay, so these are the 3 characters we're going to be looking at for the Sorcerer Kings: the Maharaja, your Raj and your Sardar. So we're going to take a look at each one of them in turn. Okay, so our first character is the Maharaja, of which you can only have one in your actual faction army. I pop the box open. It contains, here we go, a set of cards. So your combat stack card, to designate his activation, little QR code on it. Then Intrusive Thoughts, Spiteful Winds, Fiery Dominion and Conflagration. These are the spells that he can choose from. Standard Conquest backing. And again, QR codes to bring you to the links for those. Standard infantry tray. And then our resin pieces. So we have a staff there inside its own little baggie. Fair bit of flashing on them. It seems to be the way they cast. But a 4-piece build. The main body is pretty much complete. Head and hands to go on, and that's it. And looking on first blush, bit of a seam line under the arm, and again some minor flashing which will come off with a brush, but otherwise quite cleanly cast, no bubbles or slippage. Very detailed head there, huge turban and his flaming crest. And then we have our hands. So let's get him built up and we'll talk about him in game terms in a bit more detail. Okay, so the Maharaja is built. You can only have a single Maharaj in your force, I believe, for each court. Build was very simple. Head, 2 hands on, and everything else was done. So cute enough. Cleanup was easy. Still have to straighten out the staff, which I haven't yet. That just requires heat. I thought I'd show you as is. But yeah, very crisply detailed. A little bit of cleanup may be required where the seams appeared for the 2 halves of the mold. So under that armpit, you might see some, so it sort of runs along and down. And then it ran around the back of the cloak and along the bottom and top of these arms. So, like I say, cleanup's minimal. Detail is absolutely gorgeous on it. Game terms, he is essentially your sort of main caster. He brings a lot of buffs to the army, including the ability to have additional mainstay regiments in your retinue warbands. So instead of being capped at 4 regiments per warband, you can take an extra mainstay, bring you up to 5. So you can theoretically bring spam style lists or load up on the bigger, more impressive pieces of kit because you've got many more slots you can fill, depending on how you put your list together. Up next are his cards. So I thought I'd talk about the cards very briefly. The Maharaja, obviously, his card goes into the command stack to tell you when it activates. However, rather than being your standard spells, these are rituals, and this is a defining trait of the Sorcerer Kings, that they have access to rituals, and during their activation, the characters, mostly casters, but not always, have ways of adding ritual tokens to these. Once you've got enough ritual tokens, so for example, I believe Conflagration requires 5 tokens on it, and they can come not just from the Maharaja, but also from the Sardar or even the Raj. They stack up when you hit your cap, when you hit the maximum you need to cast this spell. The ritual tokens come off. This then goes into your hand or into your deck at the end of the turn and becomes part of your command stack. So you don't trigger the spell automatically. It's not like a ranged spell from some of the other casters in game. This is something you prep over a number of rounds, potentially, and then when you hit that point in your stack during your turn, so when Conflagration comes out, it's then activated as if you were activating your regiment or unit that would normally be pulled out via the command stack. You then resolve the ritual effect at that stage. And generally, most of the rituals that I've seen, the final part is draw the top card from your command stack, and if it is X, and X might be something that has the Court of Fire or Court of Air attached to it, then you get to play that immediately. So you can potentially trigger a very powerful spell in these rituals and then still activate a unit afterwards. And obviously when building your command deck, you know how that stack is going to be resolved. So you hit the Conflagration, you know that's going to go off, and you know that a fire elemental will get to activate afterwards. So you would put that card next. So you know that you're going to get ritual followed by activation of a unit, which is a very powerful thing and an interesting way they work. Okay, next up is our Raj, another one of our casters for the Sorcerer King. Inside the box, again, we have the cards. So activation card, and then the spells, they are accessible. Our infantry base or stand, and our model itself along with their base. So a bit more cleanup required on this. Oh, well, no, actually, I thought those were slightly bigger seams, but it actually appears to be another just very thin line of flashing. That'll clean up when I put it in its little hot water bath. A curved blade, again, fair amount of flashing on it, but looks to be relatively well cast. And then his spell effect itself, which I could almost leave that on for the spell effect, but we'll get him cleaned up and see exactly how good he is. Next up we have the Raj, similar to the Maharaja in that they are a caster with access to rituals. They have some similar rituals and also some slightly different rituals that the Maharaja doesn't have access to, so depending on who you take, you may have different abilities available. A bit more of a close combat buffing character, although some of his rituals are still attacking. The model itself went together very easily. Arms neatly nestle in there. And with these, there's so much intricate detail on the actual models themselves. You may want to keep the arms separately if you're a good painter to allow access to all of the fine detail. If you're like me, you'll spray it all black and dry brush it heavily. Don't worry about it. Move on with your life. But I absolutely love the sort of spell whipping around behind him, flowing that way. Unlike the Maharaja, he has access to both courts, or he counts as being part of both the Court of Air and Court of Fire, which means then he has the benefit of buffing both types of units in the game as well. He is also a big fellow, around 40 mil to eye level, so big chunky figures, absolutely beautifully detailed though, especially with this Eastern feel to them. A lot of intricate design work going in there, and things like the scale armor is gorgeous as well. So that's our Raj. Alright, our final character to look at is the combat character, the Sardar. So again, boxed in a similar fashion, again with the stand. Though I imagine he is a character and will be leading a retinue, so just a single card, as he is not a caster, but a fighter. And with him, we have our most complicated build, potentially. He also requires an arm and a cloak to go on, as well as his head. I don't think that's going to be overly taxing. Again, nothing particularly egregious. Fair bit of flashing, but very thin. See the sprue gates on his feet. This one on the back of the heel. Maybe a little visible when based. No, well, we'll see. I think it's mostly down enough, we should be okay. But nothing immediately eye-catching as far as bubbles or issues with that. Okay, so the Sardar is built. There he is in all his epic finery. And here is the model doing exactly the same thing. Build for this one, relatively straightforward. Arm, head, cloak, all sat in neatly. This cross arm didn't do it for me. There was a mortise and tenon to connect here, and I feel one of them was a little bit bigger than it should have been, or smaller, depending. In the end, I just cut the pin off and glued it flat. It is a resin model. It takes glue beautifully once you've scuffed the surface, so that may just have been my cast. It may have squeezed the hole that the peg was going to go into, so had that, not major issue sorted. A little bit of cleanup required from the two halves of the mold, so there's a bit of a seam line, but otherwise clean as a whistle and absolutely beautiful. In game terms, he's very limiting in what he can bring. Humans, essentially, not bringing elementals, Efreets, jinns, or anything else. He can bring the massive Mahout alabaster elephant, and he also has the ability to buff things like the Rajakur infantry units as well. So when they're capturing objectives, they count as being larger than they are. Again, beautiful work on the armor. Should paint up a treat, and no major issues with the casting. And he is sneakily only 35mm tall because he's creeping along like a creepy thing. So there we have it, the Sardar. So there we have 3 of our Sorcerer King heroes, the Maharaja, Raj and Sardar, depending whether you want to go very combat effective or super into your magic. They're all viable in different ways. I'm not saying he's an auto-include, but what I will say is I won't be putting any lists together that don't include him, because why would I not? Bring a Maharaja to any fight. He's fantastic. Beautiful sculpts as always, and a really interesting way in which the Sorcerer Kings prepare their magic and their rituals as well, giving them a very different feel from some of the other casters in other armies. Alrighty then, another set of beautiful resins from Para Bellum once again. Really intricate detailing on them and really evocative of the East, the Orient and the Sorcerer Kings mysticism. So some really nice posing, really fine detail and that elemental theme coming through on all of the miniatures. Well worth having a look at these if you're interested in a fantasy army that's a little bit different from more Renaissance European. And let me know what you think below. Next time, I'll be back with some more interesting stuff from the Sorcerer Kings. Bye-bye. Hello everyone. Today we'll be taking a look at the Vanguard of the Sorcerer Kings for Conquest, the fantasy game from Para Bellum, as I check out the Ghols. All right, here we have the Sorcerer King Ghols. The people who've given themselves over to the elemental powers that be. On the reverse, we have a bit of lore and some details, so you can see up close what's going on with these absolute maniacs. And then here we have an example of 4 of them built and painted. Very different type of creation. Love the negative space. They're being consumed by the elemental fire themselves. Cheap, expendable fodder for the battlefield. So inside our box we have a bag of bases, your standard rounds for the skirmish First Blood, and your movement trays for when you're playing Last Argument of Kings. We have the activation card for when you're building your stack in game, along with the QR code on it. We have 3 sprues, which are identical. And we have our assembly instructions. So, taking a look at the assembly instructions first. It is a little A5 booklet. Sprue on the front. The most up-to-date instructions are here in case anything changes. And then inside, how to build your troops. So, pose 1, 2, and 3. Pose 4 on the back, which can be a trooper or a leader. Little cog tells you can exchange heads. There are options available for that. So if you want to build your leader, you add this head instead of this head. And you can also change the arms round as well. However, when you're building it, there's nothing to say you put that head on with these arms and vice versa. Add a bit of difference to your unit build. So our sprue for the Ghols, 3 of these in the box. So you will have 4 models replicated 3 times. Relatively compact sprue. Some lovely detail on them. The sprues themselves, as always, are numbered with arrows pointing to the relevant parts to make life easier for you to assemble. Some really nice detail with the likes of the chains, as well as the flames and the consumed body. Everything looks like it's cast in a decent quality. Can't see any miscasts or issues with it. And they should go together a treat in short order. So let's get them built. Okay, so the Ghols are built. Simple enough build. The bodies and arms are actually all numbered on the sprue. So where I seen that indent in the shoulder and I seen a number, that number corresponds to the body type. So if you see a 2 on the inside, it means it fits body 2. So even though the instructions will tell you arm 10, 11 will fit on body 2, you can just read on the inside. There's a few where that won't work, where the sprue gate is attached to that part of the arm and it doesn't have the indentation and numbering, but otherwise it does the job. So every body that you build has got options. These 2 here are standard build of them. And size-wise, like all of the Conquest miniatures, they're big. So over 35mm to eye level, about 40mm tall. If I bring in one of our others, you can see here the 2 different build types. So each body has 2 heads and 2 pairs of arms attached. You get 3 bodies per sprue, which means you can build, pair of arms, and then mix the arms for your third. And the heads, while they are specified to a certain body, all of them are ball socket joints. So you have a bit of posability in there, and you can also choose to swap all of the heads around without any problems at all. So again, when putting together a regiment of your Ghols, they are diverse in build options, especially when you look at this cavitied body. So here we have our 2 options, like the other 3 that you get on the sprue. So 2 head types, 2 arm pairs, again wreathed in flame and chains. Really love the negative space being absolutely destroyed. However, there is a leader option with this, with that magnificent turban and beard. And then these arms, these are 2-part, so from shoulder to elbow and elbow to hand. And then the flames actually lock into the hand separately. There's one other body that has this sort of arm-elbow connection. So really made the sprue work to put these together. And in game terms, they are a lot of attacks. No armor, but very fast, with the ability to get up the board through vanguard moves and free activations as well, depending on when rituals are used in game. It means the Ghols can be not just a chaff unit, but a very good flanking unit and something to scare off lightly armored troops, just due to the sheer volume of attacks and free actions that they can get their hands on. All right, the Ghoul. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. Probably isn't, though. Really different looking set of vanguard infantry, I suppose. Help my vanguards on fire. They are really, really nice models. I like them being so delicate with the sort of the negative spaces. They're being eaten away and consumed by the elemental energy inside them. So terrific looking figures, and really invaluable on the tabletop as well for your Sorcerer King force. But let me know what you think below. I'm going to head on. Bye-bye.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to be taking a look at some more fantasy for Conquest by Para Bellum Games as I check out the Efreet Sword Dancers and Flamecasters for the Sorcerer Kings.
Okay, our Sorcerer King Efreet Flamecasters. They can also make Efreet Sword Dancers. Here we see the some of the details on the plastics along with their backstory, and then the actual assembled models. So 3 large flame casting djinn, I suppose. They may be some other form of nefarious Sorcerer King conjuration. We'll find out in a moment. You get your bag of bases and stands for playing both the skirmish and mass battle game. We get our paperwork, so the 2 activation cards, Flamecaster and Sword Dancer. Gorgeous artwork on those. I really like where they're gone with it. We get our assembly instructions. So based off the renders, this is essentially an A3 poster sized fold out. One side has your Flamecasters, your ranged unit. All 3 build in a fairly standard fashion. They are monopose, so there's not a huge amount of flexibility in the construction, but then the models themselves have been sculpted to have that sort of baked in. The other side has our combat unit, the Sword Dancers, and again, each page is a build. Can't see that there are any alternative options beyond the 2 types, but we will see. There is a rotate part. I've not seen that before, but I see it on this flame. So potentially that's going to go in an unusual way. I shall let you know once I've built them. Sprue wise, we have 2. So 1 large sprue that contains most of the components for the Efreet. Everything is numbered and arrows point towards the correct position. So when you go to grab 44, you know which one 44 is. It won't be a mystery. Some really nice detail on the plastics. And then we have the second smaller sprue, like 1/3 of the size. Has another Efreet body. In fact, it may be a complete model in here. There's certainly the body, sword arms for the Sword Dancer, and the casters, flames there as well. So that'll be handy if they're popping individuals into something like First Blood packs. Then they have a little mini sprue that will do it all. Okay, let's get our Burning Boys built. All right then, the Efreets. So they can either be built as the Flamecasters, in which case they have a 12 dice short-ranged flaming barrage of torrential fire from the sky as a sort of ranged version, which is lovely. A bit up close and personal, but lovely. Or with the Sword Dancers, they can get really up close and personal and then go slicing and dicing. Okay, so I've gone with the Sword Dancers. And as you can see, they are delightfully large figures. This in question is the tallest, I believe, and comes in around 90, about 95mm to the top of the sword, and around 72 to eye level. Intricate build on the things like the flames. The bodies themselves mostly simple, 2-part front and back, and then maybe a bit of detail like a loincloth. And then the arms and the head were one piece, just going straight in there, sitting in one place. But then the flames, depending on the Efreet in question, it might be 2 halves, it might be 3 with a central part, or it might be 2 halves and then 2 smaller halves on top to conjoin it, to get this really dynamic swirling fire that they are coming out from. Detail on them is really nice. One of my favourites here with this strange banded turban. So a really distinctive look for them. Clean up on the flames is a little bit annoying. There were some big sprue gates in places and I couldn't work out whether they were tips of flames or where I should be cutting the sprue gate off, just to get them to lock together. So a bit of dry fitting is required on these, but I mean the detail on it is absolutely great. And then our final stalking forward, ready to slam straight into somebody like a emissary of fire should, with those wicked curved weapons. I can just imagine them slicing and dicing like Captain Nemo in the wonderful League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, lest we forget. So those are our sword dancers. Game-wise, like I say, I think these, for me, I much prefer these as a melee version, although the short-range torrential fire ensuing flamecasters, I mean, they've got their place. If anybody comes near them, they can really reach out and touch someone with a, I suppose, like an 18-inch threat range, because 12-inch fire and about a 6-inch move first. So they have potential, but you want to use them well, and you want to keep them as a sort of a second line, I imagine, to hit, and then hopefully buff or heal them up using some of your casters and their rituals.
There we go then, folks. The Efreet Sword Dancers. Flamecasters, nice models, short range, bucket load of attacks, torrential fire, all great rules. But I feel like there are other things that will do that job better for the Sorcerer Kings. So went with the Sword Dancers as a punchy block of fire elemental death. And the miniatures look absolutely superb to boot. Let me know what you think below. I'm going to move on. Bye-bye. Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be diving back into the fantasy world of EA as I check out the Rajakur for the Sorcerer Kings in Conquest by Para Bellum Games.
Okay, here we have our Rajakur for the Sorcerer Kings for Conquest. So this is a box of 12 infantry. On the reverse you have some close-up detail shots and a bit of a background lore-wise, and then some completed examples. Unlike other Conquest units, especially infantry units, which tend to be dual kits, this is a single. So in the box we get our bag of bases, singles for First Blood, stands for Last Argument of Kings, and then we also get your sprues and our paperwork. So activation card, and our assembly instructions. The activation card has got the QR code linking you through to the Rajakur, Para Bellum's army builder and website. And then our assembly instructions. We have a single sprue, all numbered. And then pose 1, 2, 3, and 4. So each sprue will make 4 types. We have options, as you can see with the cogs. So this mace arm can go on in place of some of the others. Likewise here, we have some changes there as well. The sprue itself is absolutely packed. So, start off in the center, we have 5 of these shields, which are incredibly detailed. I mean, they are beautiful. Really evoking the Indian aspect of the sort of the design aesthetic. We have a lot of maces, and our 4 bodies are mostly 2-part from what I can see, scattered about the sprue. So front and back in some cases. We have a set of legs here separately in another case. You may be able to see that the legs and internal chest parts are all lettered, but the sprue itself is numbered as well. So you can build the bodies without having to look any further. We have 1 overly large shield, so for 5 shields for 4 people, presumably a champion. We also have a standard, which is going to be on every sprue. That's a really nicely designed standard with a lot of raised detail on it. If you're not fond of freehand, that'll do a lot of the work for you. So, have a selection of half heads, again numbered on the heads themselves as well as on the sprue, so you shouldn't be able to confuse matters when it tells you pick up head 39, and you know head 39 is 5 and 5 wherever it is. So yeah, that's a nice touch. Should make assembly much easier. In fact, there's 5 over there. Bish bash bosh. Right, let's get the troops assembled, and we'll see how they look when they're all done. All right then, our Rajakur are built. Interesting set. Because I'm so used to the dual kits from Para Bellum, I think this is actually the first single unit kit I've built that hasn't been a large monster or a big support thing like the brutes. So because the infantry are only built as the Rajakur, they've actually been able to stuff an awful lot of extra bits and pieces onto the sprues. So we'll start off with our standard, which is, as you can see, a lovely, again, big fella. Build for all of these was fairly simple, with the exception of 1 set of arms, which I'll show you in a minute. Because all the arms were lettered in the same way that the bodies are. So front A, back A, left arm A, right arm A. Bam, put it all together. You've got your arms are all there, your body's built. The only thing that isn't is the heads. And the heads are actually extensive on this kit. So when you look at it, you've got 3 of each body in the box, because you get 3 sprues. And this shows the 3 built. There are 8 heads per sprue that are all unique. So you're only having 4 duplications. There are also 2 mace hand weapons. So this big Satsuma-like one with the segments, and then a flat crossed one, which means when you come to build your regiment up, you have a lot of flexibility to give a variation in build between heads and weapon types. The arms are relatively set, so even though you can swap the hands round in some cases, the shield arms are going to be in the same position, but then you've got 15 shields for 12 men, 3 of which are large, sort of a champion type shield, but there's no reason you can't use those multiple times, which just allows you then to play around with the builds to make them a bit more unique, stop the repetition. Detail's really nice on all of these. Big chunky detail for the armor and the sort of the engraving, I suppose, or embroidery in other places on the front of their robes. So if you're using things like speed paints, then they'll go on a treat. A lot of stuff on the faces and helms as well. So that's our first. Next up, this body here. Again, you can see how these look. Now this was the one, the arms, I had to double check the box art to make sure I was putting these on right. The instructions as well, I suppose it has it there. The connection point is softer than some of the others. It doesn't lock in and key tightly, so you've got a bit of wiggle room. Now, with that, you can alter the position of that arm slightly. However, you lose some detail at the top where it does sort of peg in, so you need to keep that in mind. But there you can see different chain options on them. Again, really nice looking figures. And then we have our hero type. So you can see here the hero is wearing a full faced helm, and the face is actually forged or worked to look like a human face, but it's a full plate frontage, if you will. So he's a bit bigger, bulkier and taller than his compadre. He's also got that absolutely monumentally big mace to go with, making him an ideal candidate to check for size. So if I chuck that in there, you'll see he is just over 35mm to eye level. His non-captain version is about 35mm to eye level, so that head just gives him a slight advantage there. So you know your champion's a bit bigger, and he looks more spectacular for it. But overall, nice models to put together, very quick and easy. There's a bit of cleanup or seam lines that may need to be hidden depending on how anal you are about these things. But you might get away with just a quick buff with wire wool and a run over with some polystyrene cement, thinned down poly cement. But yeah, there's a terrific looking set of figures that you can put onto the tabletop for your Sorcerer Kings.
There we go. Somewhat unusual insofar as for an infantry set, it's not a dual kit for once, but reflective of how the Sorcerer Kings infantry are fielded. So your standard Rajakur infantry are heavily armoured, very ornate, wielding all the maces, while the sort of infantry archers are very, very lightly armoured, and they're better described by the the disciples of Dunur. So hopefully you'll see more of those in the future. But this set absolutely blew me away. Stunning looking models, really intricate, fine detail on them, and definitely worthy of a king. Let me know what you think below. Until next time, bye-bye.
It's the Conquest Sorcerer Kings week, and with a comment, you could win an amazing box set. We will choose 3 winners. 1 from YouTube, 1 from OnTableTop.com, and 1 from our Cult of Games members. So you guys get an extra chance to win.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.